Well, hello, welcome. So I'm Ann Tucker. This is my
I'm
husband,
Kelly Tucker.
and we are partners in Reininger Winery. We're also family members with Chuck Reininger. He is our brother-in-law. Chuck Reininger is married to Kelly's sister, Tracy. We've been involved in Reininger since 2002, 2003. And prior to that, both Kelly and I worked for another winery in Washington State for 16 years called the Hogue Cellars. So we've been in this business a long time.
Since 1987.
Since 1987, yeah. And we're actually thought it would be really fun to do an event from just a casual barbecue event where we focused on our Sangiovese wines that we make. We're doing it a whole Sangiovese focus at the winery right now in the tasting room and virtually for 4 days. And so we just thought it would be really fun as part of this to do an informal barbecue, include some recipes and sort of show you what we would make for ourselves or for a casual barbecue at the winery if we were able to have guests, which we're not. So, and include the recipes, make the recipes available online. And so that's what we're doing today. So this is our 2019 Helix Rosé made from 100% Sangiovese grapes. It is this really beautiful pale salmon color.
From Stillwater Creek Vineyard.
In Stillwater Creek Vineyard. It's a single vineyard located in the central portion of Washington State. The grapes are grown specifically to be a rosé for us. It's dry. It's got a lot of great fruit notes. We just had poured ourselves some. We were sort of sticking our nose in it and getting ready to have our first taste. It's all stainless steel fermented. So what we really want in this wine is for the fruit to really shine through. We don't want to cover it up with oak. And we want this to be a really good food pairing wine. So it is quite dry and it does have a fair amount of acid to it. And what we're pairing it with to start, we're actually going to do 2 different pairings with it is, so this is very summer seasonal meal. So what we've made here is just a simple plate of, I don't know if anybody can see it, so I'm going to try to tilt my plate this way. So this is just a really little simple platter of local cantaloupe melon, and I've wrapped just a tiny bit of prosciutto ham around it. So the combination of the—
Can I have some?
Yes, absolutely. Please dig in. So the combination of the sweet fruit and the juicy melon with the really salty prosciutto, it's a nice appetizer that you can start with. You could also do it, instead of doing it on a plate, you could cut the cantaloupe more into like cubes, and you could put a little piece of prosciutto around it, and then you could put a little toothpick in it if you wanted to do like a big platter of just help yourself, make it more versatile. But this is something that I would make in the summer. It's classic. It's easy. It's 2 ingredients, and it's delicious with a dry rosé wine. I'm going to have a taste now.
I know we had one question earlier, and you just kind of highlighted it, that this is a super easy recipe with just 2 ingredients. Are there other go-to recipes that the 2 of you like using that are great to bring to, get-togethers or impromptu happy hours that are used with, I guess, anything that might be in your pantry or fridge?
Right. Well, I really like to take like a baguette and just slice it thinly and bake it in the oven and just have, so you just kind of got a crisp bread. And then it's really easy if you've got a good cheese in your refrigerator, you can put a little cheese on the top of that. Jams can work really well. There's some delicious jams out there that you can put on that. You could also, do tomatoes if they're in season. There's really so many things you can do like that. I think, there's some great frozen products out there that you can make that are good with, especially with like a rosé or a dry white. For example, you can buy the frozen like medium-sized shrimp with the tails on, and you can get those out of the freezer. You can bake those in the oven really quickly. You can make a dipping sauce again using like an apricot jam and maybe some ginger. That's a really nice mixture that you can do. That's super easy, very few ingredients. My favorite way to do homemade hummus is keep a jar of marinated artichoke hearts in the just in the jar in your pantry, and then a can of garbanzo beans. And all you need to do is you drain and rinse the garbanzo beans, and you drain the artichoke hearts, and you put them in a food processor, those two items, and you puree it. You can add a little bit of the marinade from the artichoke heart mixture, and there you go. It's a really, really delicious artichoke hummus that people love. Nuts are always good, and of course charcuterie boards are very in right now. They're very popular and in style, and a lot of those items you can keep in your pantry and just kind of pull out and assemble quickly.
Are there kind of quick go-to wines that would pair with those?
You know, I think a dry rosé is always a really good choice. You can take, it goes with so many different food choices. I also think a dry Chardonnay that has not too much oak is a really nice choice. I like Viognier, which we make. It's very floral, and a lot of people like Viognier.
Stainless steel too.
Stainless steel fermented. Great mouthfeel on that. I also love, if I was taking something maybe that had a little bit of heat in it, I love dry Riesling, dry Chenin Blanc. And oftentimes those you can find they're fairly inexpensively. People say that sparkling wine, white, goes with everything. Champagne, Prosecco can be a really great choice as well. Abby, do you have any wines that you want to add to that? Those are all whites and rosés.
Yeah, you know, my like kind of go-to things for like bringing over to people's houses, I have this one crostini recipe that I love doing, and I would recommend pairing it with a drier white, like the Viognier that we have under the Helix label. And that is just like your basic like toasted baguette with a little bit of chev. And then I drizzle just a tiny bit of local honey and crushed walnuts on top of it. And I will broil it for like 5 minutes. But it's super easy, and everybody thinks it's like very fancy. But it takes all of like 5 minutes to create.
Exactly.
So again, I guess I agree with you that like my go-to for apps to bring to like a happy hour are always pairing with whites and rosés.
Cool. Another hors d'oeuvre that's been around for eons, but people love, they will never get tired of it, is a bacon wrap date. And it's so easy to do. And I mean, if you show up at a party with a baked bacon wrap date, boy howdy, those things will go really quickly. And those are also very good with red wine, I think. Especially like a Syrah or something that's sort of a herbaceous red. I was trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah, bacon wrap date is a good one. I thought of something. I'll think of it later. It'll come back to me, and we'll probably be talking about something else. But yeah, I think that just keeping a few things in your pantry is the right, and your freezer. Frankly, I mean, I just keep a few things in my pantry cupboard as well, like the artichoke hearts, for example, and the garbanzo bean. So we're going to go on to something to also serve with this rosé. And this is a kind of a fun idea that Abby had. So I don't know how well you can see it.
Well, we're going to have to serve it, right?
But, yep, we're going to have to serve it. So this is a very summer pasta salad that we made.
You have to tell what's in it.
Using, well, let's serve it first, and then I'll tell you what's in it. Okay, can you move your arm to the left, just to the left a little bit? So
Are you serving it for me?
I'm serving it for you.
I was going to do you first.
So this I'll tell you what the ingredients are. This is very simple. This is a really big, fat, oversized rigatoni pasta, tubular pasta, with some local corn that we cooked. We charred it on the barbecue. It doesn't take very long. It's really easy to do. Whoop. And then it has just tomatoes, sliced cherry tomatoes, some bacon that we cooked in the saute pan, some onion that we cooked in the saute pan, and a little bit of olive oil. And I wanted to mention, we have these little gift packs that we did in sort of to promote the whole Sangiovese event. And this is kind of fun, so I wanted to show everybody. So I am a big fan of this Rumo brand of pasta. It's a little more expensive. It's not outrageously expensive. It's a little more expensive. It's really good pasta. It's dry pasta.
I can attest to that.
But it's got a really great texture. It doesn't get all limp and slimy. It really holds its shape. It's just delicious. And they make everything from this giant rigatoni that we're using today to bucatini and
so where can I find
fettuccine. Well, so this pasta actually is part of our gift packs. You can buy from us. We teamed up with a local restaurant in Walla Walla. It's called T-Max, an Italian restaurant. And they now have a little, they have an Epicurean store. And so this is available from T-Max. Or us. If you'd like to get a gift pack from us, we can ship it to you. You can go online and order it. We also have a really fun sort of high-end olive oil. It's actually from, it's a Nabali olive oil. It's from Palestine. It's organic, it's fair trade. And we selected this because it's something you're not going to find in the stores here. Again, we purchased it for our gift packs from T-Max and Walla Walla. It's quite fruity. It's got a little bit of pepper on the finish, and it's just in some cooking, EVOO that's not too expensive is fine. But I think when you're making a salad and it's got a sort of a vinaigrette type dressing, I think it's really important to use a high quality olive oil, one that's not too heavy. So again, this is part of our little gift pack, and we use both of these items to make our pasta salad. So now I'm going to remove this so you can see us again. Abby, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a wonderful job. I don't really have a lot to add. I will say, at least here in Walla Walla, the Rumo pasta, that T-Max is the only place I've seen it here. But I know, Anne, that's one of your favorite brands. So I know you can find it in some higher end stores in the Portland and Seattle area.
You can find it in some grocery stores in Portland and Seattle, but I just kind of wanted everybody to see, the reason I love this rigatoni so much is it's really big. Can you kind of see how big it is? I mean, it's like the size of your pork tine. And what I don't like in pasta salads and in a lot of pastas is I don't like little tiny pasta that gets slimy, because to me there's no texture. It's not enjoyable to eat. Whereas when you eat this, you really feel like you're eating something with some, oomph to it. So again, and the corn, of course, is seasonal. The tomatoes are seasonal. The fresh basil is seasonal. It has sweet onion in it, a Walla Walla sweet onion that's been sauteed in it. And
bacon.
And bacon, which of course makes everything.
Corn and bacon.
Corn and bacon and pepper. But it's very simple to make. And again, this is the perfect kind of thing with the tomatoes and the basil and the corn to pair with a dry rosé. Other wines that would be really good with the salad are Viognier, which I think we mentioned earlier, and we make a Viognier, which is dry and floral. And then another wine that I think would be good with this would be a not oaky, an unoaked Chardonnay that's crisp and fresh. So this is actually a pretty versatile food, but I would serve this at outdoors. You want to serve it room temperature, just like I'd put it on a big platter, or actually ideally in a big bowl. and serve it, in a buffet type dinner where I was doing a barbecue.
So the corn, medium temperature on the barbecue. We have a Weber barbecue. I've never done this before, but generally when I do corn on the barbecue, I wrap it up in foil because we're basically steaming it, right? Well, I didn't know you could just barbecue it straight up. And so we put it on the grill, turned it a little bit every 3 minutes, and left it on there for basically 20 minutes, turning it every 3 minutes, and it came out
it's really good. It gets a little bit of a smoky char on it, and it's fully cooked. So yes,
yeah, it's tender and it's tasty, and I was impressed.
It's
with
really
the result.
Good. And it's great with this easy summer salad with the big fat rigatoni.
I feel like this recipe is super versatile. So like if you're vegetarians or vegans, like you don't have to add the bacon that we put in it.
You don't eat bacon.
You could also probably throw in a bunch of other vegetables. Like, Anne, what would your thoughts be on like adding some like summer zucchini or mushrooms?
The next salad we're going to have has more summer vegetables in it. But normally, if I was doing something like this, you could add zucchini to it. You could add red pepper to it. You could probably cook a little eggplant and add it. You could add I think all of those things would be a really good choice. But I always tell people when you make a pasta salad for the summer, you don't want it to be overcooked, too drippy, in my opinion, too wet, and you want it to be room temperature. And of course, if you're making something with mayonnaise, it's really hard to take that and have that sit out for a while. But with something like this, from a food safety standpoint, it can sit out longer. So this would be something that I would make for a summer party at the winery if we were doing a casual barbecue. Absolutely, I would make something like this.
It's delicious. The corn and the bacon really set it off.
Perfect. And I guess a little bit more about the olive oil too. I just to kind of go into it, like so I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't usually cook with a lot of butter when I'm cooking. I prefer olive oils. So I'm in an olive oil club, just like people are in wine clubs. And this particular one, as Anne mentioned, it's certified organic and fair trade. It's really hard to find here in the U.S. It's pretty much self-imported by various shops. And Nabali is actually a specific varietal of olive. So this is a single varietal olive oil, just like all these wines that you're trying today are single varietal Sangioveses. And this one, it's super mild, but it packs a lot of flavor to it. So a lot of olive oils can be very robust, a little bit too tannic. They're not something that you would necessarily want to bake with or put in a salad. But this one, you can do anything that you want with this olive oil.
And this is a special one. So this is one that, I would save this as a salad oil, right? I wouldn't, if I were cooking something basic, I would just use my regular EVOO. I wouldn't use this for that because if you're cooking it, it's not going to matter that much. But when you're making a salad dressing, where it's really simple ingredients, that's when an olive oil like this is really, I think, important. And by the way, the story on the back is so interesting.
The back label,
the families that are involved in growing these olives and producing this, it's really, really interesting product. So a lot of fun.
So knowing our process for bottling and labels, this is a very interesting label because they somehow have made it match exactly, and it's a wraparound label. I don't know how they did that, but I would be interested in finding out. Because usually it's just a little off kilter one way or the other.
Really fun. Really, really fun label. So yeah. So any questions, Abby, that anybody has that might be related to, this is all just summer, easy summer food. You know, most of it is garden food.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned at least serving like the pasta salad at room temperature, but what about the wine?
Oh, good question. Well, I want my wine to be chilled. You know, sometimes if you get wine too cold, white wine and rosé too cold, especially, you lose, if it's really, really cold, you lose a lot of the flavor. And so you want it chilled, but you don't necessarily want it ice cold. I mean, I don't think that's necessary at all. And in fact, this is now, this is still a little bit chilled, but it's not ice cold at all. And I like it that way. If I want something ice cold, I'll have my glass of water over here.
We missed talking about the specific brand of olive oil. Do you mind holding the label up a little bit closer to the camera so people can see what it is? And the brand is called Canaan. The label is very simple. I'm not sure if you can see it. I can go and grab mine as well. But it's Canaan Palestine, and the specific type is Nabali olive oil. And if you type that in, Nabali, olive oil into like your Google search bar, is like the first thing that pops up is their website.
Right.
And their website is very detailed and a beautiful website as well. Very educational.
I think it's very interesting. A great story behind that olive oil. Make a great gift for someone, along with the Rumo pasta and a bottle of Sangiovese too. Okay. Should we move on to the next salad and the next wine pairing, Abby?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the next salad and wine that we're going to pair, well, let's start with the wine, actually. I vote Mr. Tucker. So the next wine that we're going to pour is also a Sangiovese, obviously. This is 100% Sangiovese. It's from the same vineyard that we talked about before. It's Stillwater Creek. Now this is now Sangiovese as a red wine. And this is there. Thank you. So for anyone that doesn't know, Sangiovese is the flagship grape from the Chianti region of Italy. And that's where it is the most famous, that's the most famous region of Italy. And we've all heard about Chianti. And I remember when I was little growing up in the 60s, my parents had the raffia covered Italian bottles, and my mom would empty them and then she'd use them for, they were display items. But this is Sangiovese, grown, the grapes are grown in Washington State, same vineyard right in the middle of Washington State. I don't know if you can see
Stillwater Creek.
This is one of my favorite food wines that we make. It's got a lot of strawberry, it's got some tomato in the flavors. It's
guava.
Neutral French oak is the way it's been aged. So the idea of neutral French oak is we don't want to cover up the fruit flavors of this wine again with oak. We want the fruit and the flavors to really shine through. I think we made a couple hundred cases of this, so not a lot. It also comes with a screw cap, which I think is very handy.
Yep. Our winemaker says there's a lot of raspberry and plum.
And so knowing that we were going to be serving this wine and knowing that it's summer and it's an outdoor barbecue, I picked something a little, maybe a little bit out of the box that I think you can do. So this is a traditional bread salad. And typically in Italy, you would have a bread salad that was made with tomatoes and maybe cucumber and these bread cubes that have been toasted. But since we were already having a pasta salad with tomato, I wanted to choose something a little different. So this is bread salad made with grilled zucchini and grilled red onion, grilled swallow sweet onion, and then red pepper. It has a basil vinaigrette, really simple dressing. And then on the top, I've sprinkled some Chev goat cheese. So this, just because of the smokiness of the grilled vegetables and the cheese, this you really can pair with a red like a Sangiovese. It really can work. And again, we're not doing potatoes in this barbecue. We're doing pasta, and then we're doing grilled bread. And Abby, I took a picture. I wanted everybody to see. This is the easiest thing in the world to do on a barbecue. Abby's going to show you the photo. You basically cook everything at the same time on the barbecue. You slice the bread, you slice the onions, you slice the zucchini, you slice up the red onion, and you just cook it on the barbecue. Spray it with some canola spray, and then you cook it all on the barbecue, and you just take things off as you go along. You kind of have to watch things, but it doesn't take very long at all. You bring it in the house, you cut it all up.
The zucchini gets done faster than you think.
The zucchini gets done quickly. And I actually made this ahead of time, and you can make this ahead of time. But what I don't recommend is keep the bread cubes separate, because you want the bread cubes to not get too, if you kept them in the mixture for too long, it would get a little soggy. So you can make it ahead, do the grilled vegetables ahead, mix it all up, and then add the bread cubes and the cheese at the very last second. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and dish up this beautiful red pepper salad. I'll do you first because you're closest to it. Look, we got big cheese.
I know.
So again, cheddar cheese.
That's my favorite part.
Walla Walla sweet onion that's grilled. And I think you saw in that photo, that's a great way to grill an onion. You just stick a skewer, you slice it in like 1-inch thick pieces, and you stick a skewer through it, and you can lay it flat on the barbecue that way. All right, we're gonna do me now. So again, the reason why I think you can make this work is because it's a little smokier with the grilled vegetables, and
there you go.
It's got the cheese on it. Now you could make this if you didn't eat cheese. You could certainly not put cheese on this. If you had a group of people, you could make the salad, and then you could put the cheese on the sides, and people could just sprinkle the cheese on the top. I've made the salad many times. I made it one time with for someone who can't eat onion. And so I just grilled the onion and kept it separate. And then people could put the onion on their salad if they wanted to. It also has basil. It has Dijon mustard, the beautiful olive oil that we talked about, some lemon juice instead of vinegar. It's got lemon juice, tiny bit of garlic. So it really, again, it's nothing, there's really no extraordinary ingredients in this other than maybe the cheese is a little bit extraordinary. But I buy this particular chev. You can buy it at like places like Trader Joe's, and it's not terribly expensive. Questions, Abby?
Well, I do want to just mention to everybody, for those watching, I did put it in the group chat, but you can find all of these recipes that Anne is cooking at helixwine.com/winedine. And we also have some additional recipes on there for a winter menu as well. Because Sangio, although it is a great barbecue wine, it also, a lot of those hearty Italian foods are winter recipes. So we wanted to give you some of our favorites as well.
Yeah, maybe this would be a good time to talk about some of those winter recipes. So there's a couple on there that are my go-tos. There's a mushroom bolognese sauce on there that is a vegetarian mushroom bolognese that is just so good. And when you put it on a big pasta like this, it's vegetarian. It's not dairy free, but it is just really a really good sauce. And then when you're if you're celebrating or it's the holidays, there's a recipe on there it's called a Mediterranean lamb shank, and it was actually from a restaurant here in Portland. And you cook a lamb, it's not hard at all, but you cook a lamb shank, and then there's tomatoes and some grated orange peel and Kalamata olives, and then a really interesting ingredient, which is fresh ginger. It's very simple to make. And then I like to serve it over in a bowl over polenta. And I included my favorite polenta recipe that I think is my go-to polenta recipe, because you can bake it in the oven. You don't have to stir and stand there and stir and stir and stir. It comes out great. People love it. And again, it's kind of a hands-off thing. So again, I think that's a really great thing for the holidays. So I sort of put something in there, mushroom bolognese, which is delicious. But then I also put something in there would be great for the holidays if you were wanted something a little, fancier. Abby, what else did I put on there? I put on a little hors d'oeuvre suggestion on there. Again, I love it. It's this little thing where you take a toothpick and you basically do a green olive with a little piece of feta cheese and a cucumber. And it stands up on a toothpick, and it's really easy and it's different, and people always get very excited about it when you bring it to something.
Fabulous.
Now, both of these two recipes we started with you can definitely moderate them so they are vegetarian, but how do you approach like wine and food just in general, or for like winemaker dinners or something like that, while being conscious of people who are vegetarian or gluten-free or vegan?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm cooking at home, I typically know what my audience is. And so I generally always ask people, do you have food allergies? Are you gluten-free? Are you vegetarian? I have a niece who's a vegetarian, and she comes every year for Thanksgiving. And, everything, I always say Thanksgiving is about the sides. It's not really about the turkey anyway. So, all of the sides that we make are vegetarian. And so she just doesn't eat turkey, and she's quite happy. She's like, I don't care. There's so many other great things here. I really don't care. I think that when you're cooking for a vegan, it is trickier. And I don't really cook for many vegans. So if I were going to have someone over that was vegan, I would do what I always do, which would be to go on the internet and start researching. I went to a phenomenal vegan restaurant this year in Los Angeles. Actually, we both did with our daughter, and I was blown away by the food that I ate there.
What they could do.
And I had no idea. I'll just say that I had no concept of what things people do, the chemistry that people have figured out, like how to replace certain things, to make something, is really, really fascinating. But honestly, Abby, you deal with, when we have winemaker dinners and where there's a chef that's cooking the meal, not just, a home cook like me, we always do try to accommodate those people. And the chef usually has an idea, right?
They do. I think the hardest dinner like I've done for the winery was actually the one we did last fall. I think it was the funnest, but we really had it focused on big game. So we did have a fish course, but there was an elk course. There was a wild boar course. So there was lots of meat. But the caterer did a fantastic job, because every year for this fall release winemaker dinner, we always have someone who is a pescatarian, and we have someone who comes who's allergic to walnuts, and we usually have someone who is a dairy free as well. And the pescatarian they'll eat fish, but they just won't eat all the red meat. So for that course, the chef used a lot of portobello mushrooms. Mm-hmm. That's a great substitute when you're doing a dinner with a red meat, using that big like portobello mushroom cap. It's lots of protein, super filling, and pairs with the exact same wines.
Great call, Abby. That's a really good solution.
Yep.
I have to say, at our home, even though we drink a lot of red wine, for health reasons, we don't eat a lot of red meat. We're having red meat tonight just because we're going to have the next Sangiovese is a pretty big red wine. And because I think that when you having a big barbecue, or you're having a big group of people, and you want it to be really nice, but you also want to be able to not have it be too complicated, I think the Tenderloin recipe that's included in the group of recipes that you can do on the barbecue, it's not so much the recipe itself, it's the technique of how to cook a big tenderloin on the barbecue. And
we don't do this very often.
We don't do it very often, but when we have a big group of people at our home or at the winery, and it's informal like we're doing tonight, that is a way to serve a lot of people. And people think that a big tenderloin, it is a very expensive cut of meat, but at the same time, you can serve a lot of people that big cut of meat. It will serve many, many people. And so cost per person is not really not all that bad. It's also quite easy to do. And people ask me for this all the time. And we do it even during the holidays. Like if we're doing a holiday meal, we cook it on our barbecue in the winter because it's so easy to do. And it does work with some of the really big reds that we like to make at Reininger. But I've kind of lost my train of thought. So yeah, so this is keeping in mind that if we were going to have a big group, this is something that I would do because I could make the salads ahead of time for the most part. It's not hard to cook the tenderloin. I'm interested in prepping as much as I can in advance. And that way I'm not so flustered in the kitchen. I get to actually talk to my guests and my family and those kinds of things. So cool. So with that, Abby, are there any questions before we move on to this last Sangiovese?
Yeah. What are other wines that you would recommend pairing with all the stuff you can harvest from your garden? So other recipes with squash or beets or tomatoes or corn.
Well, one thing I always tell people is think about if you're looking at a recipe, think about where the recipe might originate from or some of the ingredients. Because food and wine culturally have grown up together in different regions and they often work well together. So it's interesting, Dijon mustard, originally from France, is also where Chardonnay grapes are traditionally grown. And it just so happens that Dijon and Chardonnay are a great match. Corn, you can do corn dishes with a fruity Chardonnay. Some corn dishes can also be fantastic with a little bit of oakier Chardonnay. Now, that's not a cultural thing. That's just, it's just a personal taste thing. But you see, it's a really nice pairing. We always say that the go-to wine for tomatoes is Sangiovese. And so that's sort of a cultural thing. A lot of the tomato sauce pastas that you would have in Italy with the mozz cheese or the burrata cheese, those are great with Sangiovese, and same region, the region of Tuscany in Italy. Malbec, which is a wine that we make, but it's originally a Bordeaux varietal, but it's the flagship grape of Argentina. Malbec is fantastic with the Argentinian style grilled beef that they do. Carmenere is also great with a steak. It's a very peppery red, and so it kind of needs a big piece of meat. It's great with lamb.
Pepper rub too.
Yeah. So I think culturally, sometimes you want to look at regions and see, like what was traditionally grown in that region where those grapes are originally from, and you'll often find that they're very compatible. So, let's move on to the last wine. So the last wine is kind of fun. This is a new wine for us. It's a really limited production. Let me put it right there. This is Reininger. So this means the fruit is from Walla Walla only. Reininger Sangiovese Grosso. It's
7 Hills. I'm going to go get my tasting notes.
2017 Sangiovese, single vineyard, 7 Hills. It spent some time in the barrel. It's a bigger red, I would say, for sure. It's got a lot grippier than the previous Sangiovese that we tasted. And so in this case, it has
some savory notes
to it. And it's definitely got some savory notes to it. Which is
perfect for beef.
For a big piece of beef.
That's
so
right.
Right here on this little platter right here, we have this grilled tenderloin. And I'm actually, the recipe that's included on site is a horseradish sauce that you make. You use the dry rub that you put on the meat with the olive oil. You use a little bit of it in a sour cream horseradish mixture. I also made for summer, if you didn't want to do a creamy horseradish, because you might say, well, that's more winter. I also did an herb, sort of an Italian herb salsa, which is just a pinch of the dry rub with olive oil and parsley and mint. You really can use anything you want, ground up in my food processor. So it's just herbs with a little bit of the seasoning. So that's a little bit more of a summer sauce. But herbs, in general, I tell people herbs can work really well with red wines because some red wines have quite a bit of herbal notes to them, and so I think an herb sauce is always a good choice with any kind of grilled meat or poultry. So we're gonna dish up our little tenderloin here.
So these tenderloins were a lot thicker than other one right there.
Sorry.
There you go. You split it. There we go.
Don't sit.
We did something a little differently this time, and I cranked up the barbecue as high as it would go, 550 degrees, put the tenderloins on the grill for 4 minutes per side, turned it over 4 minutes. Yep.
I know you like that.
I love the horseradish sauce. And then then I turned down the grill after 4 minutes on a side to 250 degrees and just finished it till we got the center of the meat, where we wanted it. And I have to say it worked out quite well.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is the meat, and now I just poured myself some of this Sangiovese Grosso. Abby, do you want to talk about the wine a little bit?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things that you haven't already mentioned. So the Sangiovese Grosso, this is a specific clone of Sangiovese that is actually more commonly found in Montalcino di Brunello. So most Brunello wines that you have, they're 100% Sangiovese. Those are wines that are going to be a little bit more fuller bodied, higher alcohol, and they're actually they can age sometimes up to 25 plus years. And for the winery, this is the first Sangiovese expression Chuck ever worked with. Back in 1999, Norma Kibben gave him a call over at Seven Hills Vineyard and told him that we had some and if he wanted to kind of play around with it. So Chuck, as adventurous as he is, he took some of that Sangiovese Grosso, and that's what became the foundation of our Cima, which is the super Tuscan wine that we release every fall. It's going to be in the October club shipment. When Chuck first started making that, it was 50% Sangiovese and then 50% Bordeaux varietals, and it was aged in oak for 4 years. But now the wine is almost about 6.5 years in oak. We just bottled the 2014 vintage, and that's what's going to be coming out in October. But the Sangiovese Grosso that we specifically source, because it's going into that Cima wine, this was kind of a special project for us, and people seem to be really enjoying it. And I asked Chuck yesterday if he thought he might make more, and he said, we might in the future make another 100% Sangiovese Grosso, but we don't have a lot to ever grow this production. So it will probably always stay in that 45 to 50 case range because we want to have as much Sangio as possible for the Cima.
Right.
This is the first Walla Walla Sangio, 100% Sangio that Chuck's done.
Right.
And and I think he should do more if he can.
Yes.
Want more.
It's really good. Definitely. And it definitely is different than the Cima, Abby. And I'm sorry we don't have any Cima here today. It would be fun to taste them side by side, but Cima is a hot commodity at Reininger, and the owners, we really don't drink much of. I'm not able to drink much of it myself because we send it to our wine club. We just don't have that much of it. So I love the wine, but I actually am really enjoying this. It definitely is different than the Cima, but I'm really, really enjoying it, and it's good with it's terrific with the red meat. You could also serve it with if it was the holidays and you were one of those families or one of those people who loves to make a big, a laborious pasta, you know, lasagna with the red sauce, it could work with that. But I actually think with the meat, it's a beautiful pairing, and it would be good with the lamb dish that's included in the recipe collection, the lamb shank.
I love it because it still has that higher acid component to it, so it's great with food. But it also has a little bit of Bordeaux-esque to it too. It's not. It's not like the Helix Sangiovese. It has some leather to it, some tobacco, and some of those components that really add to the complexity, and is great with beef. Great with beef
and herbs.
And herbs, yes,
definitely.
And another thing to mention is we just bottled this wine in June. So it is still very young, and it's only going to get bigger and more complex as this bottle sets and ages for a little bit and opens up.
Abby, what's the retail price on this before a club discount?
Yeah, before a club, it is $40.
Right. It is that's really a great price, I think, I have to say. I mean, I think it's very reasonable. And then by the time you put the club discount on top of that, I mean, it's really beautiful, I think. So wonderful. So that's our beef tenderloin with an herb, both and sort of an Italian salsa type verde green salsa herb mixture, as well as a traditional horseradish sauce with chive and lemon juice and garlic. And you always want to look for can be hard to find, but you want to look for when you make this, you really want to look for the horseradish that has not been creamed. So this is just pure horseradish. Comes in a jar. It's in the refrigerator section at the grocery store. But you definitely you want to look for the non-cream variety for this. And again, the recipe itself, the way that you cook it on the barbecue is just brilliant. So when you've got one of those big tenderloins, on the barbecue, it's just such a great way to serve a big crowd of people in a buffet type setting like we've done today. We've made smaller pieces of the big tenderloin, but if we had a big crowd, we would just put it on a big, serving board, and we would just slice it. And then we would just, have it as a buffet, part of a buffet. Abby, more questions before we sort of move on? I created a little dessert, sort of in the mood of the evening, but what other questions do you have, Abby, out there?
Yeah. So I know that this beef tenderloin was a dry rub, but if you were to marinate or cook with wine, how does that help in terms of a food and wine pairing?
Well, it definitely can help. Although, you see some recipes where the wine in the recipe might be a white wine, but then you would not necessarily pour it with a red wine. I've seen that. That's interesting. I have a philosophy that if I'm making a relatively inexpensive meal intentionally, if it calls for red wine, I'm not going to put an expensive red wine in there. I mean, to me, that just destroys the purpose of an inexpensive meal. Now, I'm sure there's people that will disagree with me, but that's just sort of a philosophy that I have, is if I've got a really great wine and I've spent a lot of money for it, I'm not necessarily going to put, like, if I'm making something and drinking a $30 Merlot with the meal, I'm not going to use like half of that $30 Merlot in the marinade. I'll go find a less expensive Merlot, let's say, to use in the marinade. I tend to find the recipes right now, things are definitely more focused on dry rubs than they are like wet marinades. You do see them in some traditional cooking for sure, but dry rubs definitely seem like they're kind of the in right now. There's no question that if you're going to serve a wine, if you're going to serve a Merlot with your meal and the recipe calls for a Merlot, to have it be the same grape at least is a good idea. But I don't necessarily think it has to be the really expensive one, because it's just going to cook down anyway. You're going to cook it down. You're going to evaporate all the alcohol.
But you leave the flavors.
And you're going to leave the flavors. So that's my take on it. One thing I will say is I save my, if I have a wine a red that I haven't used for, we didn't drink it in a couple days, I still save it. Because it's just fine for marinades, and it's just fine for salad dressings, and it's fine for all those things. You're not going to drink it, but I mean, I'm not going to keep it for weeks. But if it's been sitting there from the counter for 2 days, and it's probably getting a little oxidized, I will still use it because I'm sort of a waste not, want not kind of cook. But yeah, so I definitely not going to just toss stuff.
Now, all the recipes that you made, would you serve these things typically together in one dinner, or would
not
you
necessarily? So like I would probably do, one thing I would do is, because we've got a bread and a pasta, I would probably make one of them with a grilled protein. Let's just leave it at that, because these could just as easily
could be beef, could be lamb,
chicken, could be fish, could be salmon.
Yeah.
In the Northwest we eat a lot of salmon right now. Could be halibut. I would make one of these salads, and then I might make something a little different. If I wanted to make something that was really wine friendly, I might take like the grilled zucchini salad, and then I might do
bread salad.
The bread salad, and then I might do like a watermelon tomato salad, because watermelon and tomatoes this time of year can be really good. I might do something like that, because that could work with the rosé. You could also, if you wanted to starch, a potato salad made with like a Dijon vinaigrette and the olive oil that we're talking about. That would be a really nice accompaniment if I wanted something like that. That would be great with the rosé, and the meat would be the potatoes. What else would I do? I might do like a kale salad, chopped kale. Although to me, kale is such a winter green that I don't eat as much of it in the summer because I eat so much in the winter. You could do a spinach salad. So you could do the bread salad and spinach salad, or you could do the pasta salad, and then you could do a green, more, because basically if you're doing a dark green like that, or you're giving people a lot of vegetables, quite honestly. And my sort of rule of thumb is that nutritionally is that, you want half of your plate or 3/4 of your plate to be made up of, fruits and vegetables. And then really the protein, the meat,
and
the carbs, whatever, is really a smaller part of the meal. So, I would pick one of these probably, and then do a second thing that was a little more diverse. I did these because of the pairings that we're doing today.
I like the horseradish.
For multiple courses, like you were just suggesting, do you have to serve multiple wines, or do you to have that better experience, or what do you guys tend to do at home?
Well, I would definitely offer people, if I was having a party, even if it was together, I would probably have a white or a rosé, and then I would have a bigger red, just because I know a lot of people that aren't drinking big reds, or vice versa. So I would probably offer both if I were having a party. But if it was just Kelly and I sitting down for a meal, no, we'd just open the bottle and we'd drink that bottle, and I'd pair it probably with whatever the entree was that I was having that night. So I people get really, really hung up on food and wine pairing, and it's fun and it's interesting, but I also think it's like so over. Personally, I think it's really overdone, and I think it's one of those things that makes wine feel daunting to young tasters. And again, I don't think food needs to be uber complicated to be really good and pair well with wine. And so that's really kind of everything that I have on this menu. Some of the ingredients, the lamb shank, the tenderloin, they're
we often
fancy,
have Sangiovese, the Helix Sangiovese, because it goes with
a lot of things.
Yeah. But so does Helix Pamasha.
Yeah.
We use that quite
We
often
drink a
too.
lot of that too. And
Yeah.
I drink a lot of the Helix Rosé in the summer because to me, it just is it's just summer, you know? And I feel that way
Right.
about it in particular to me is so versatile.
Yep.
It's not on the menu because it's sort of like the cantaloupe. And Abby, you actually referenced this. You make something as an hors d'oeuvre this way. So fresh figs are now coming out in season. And so I found some fresh figs. I should say Kelly found them today. And I did these ahead of time. But these are just fresh figs. And Abby, if you want to show people, I actually cooked them on the barbecue briefly for like 2 minutes. Do you have that photo?
I do.
And I put them on I made a little foil pan because anything I don't have to wash, I'm happy later. So that's my little foil pan. I truly put them on there. I cut them in half. I put them on there for 1 minute per side, which they start to get soft and it brings out the sugar in them. And then I bring them in and I top them with a tiny bit of mascarpone, which is the sweet Italian soft cheese that comes in the little tub.
Yum.
I topped them with a little mascarpone, and then I drizzled a little tiny bit of honey over the top. And so this is sort of just my idea of a simple, light summer meal. You could also put goat cheese on the top. You could put nuts on the top. Would be good. We don't eat too many nuts at our house just because we have some nut allergies, but it would be a little walnut would be delicious on there. Goat cheese you could use.
Delicious.
This would be really good. You could serve this if you wanted to get fancier. You could have like a little cake, like a pound cake or something like that, crumbled in a little bowl, and you could put this on top of that. You could do ice cream for a variety, but I mean, it makes a really, really beautiful sort of Italian light dessert for the summer. It's kind of one of those summer delicacies, and fresh figs aren't inexpensive, but you can serve several people with a little basket of figs. So honestly, if it costs you $10 to make a pie or 20, I mean, it's not that much more expensive, I don't think, but it's really a summer treat. And you're going to ask me which wine to serve. Do I like it with, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to think.
It's sweet.
I'm wondering if it's a rosé wine. I'm gonna go bring my rosé glass back. Not so much.
Now we're gonna try. We don't know the answer to this, so this is the test. I think I like it with the Grosso or maybe the Sangiovese.
I like it with the rosé personally.
You do? Okay,
I do.
so we don't agree. So there you go. What do we know, right? Who knew? Abby, what other questions do you have for us before we?
Yeah. What inspired all of these recipes?
The wine. So I knew that we needed to focus on Sangiovese, and I knew we had 3 wines, and I knew that I wanted it to be summer, and I knew that I wanted it to feel very informal, and except for the meat, I wanted the things to be not complicated, not time consuming, things that I could make ahead of time if I were doing a party. Not too, I think I said, not too expensive to make, room temperature so that they could sit out, so that, if I'm having a barbecue and it's warm outside, I don't have to worry about it. So I started with that. And then we knew that we wanted to use this Rumo pasta. And so, which I love really because it's so big and fat. We knew we wanted to do that. And I happened to have this recipe for the bacon corn salad. So that was
corn's over the top.
That was kind of easy. Really and then the Mediterranean grilled vegetable is just something I make all the time because, as you saw on the barbecue, it's literally one thing. You just cook the vegetables on the barbecue and you cut them up and you throw it all with the bread and you throw it all in the pot. And so really that is mostly it. It was to try to find things that weren't too complicated and that felt very seasonal and colorful as well. I'm big on color and texture and all that. So that was really it. But it started with the wine.
But how would you approach wine and food pairing on a budget?
I would definitely cook seasonally. And I just go to the grocery store and look for what's seasonal. And we talked about making soup. Soups in the winter are fantastic with the wines that we made tonight, because you can throw canned tomatoes in any soup just about, and herbs are terrific that you find in soups. We cook tenderloin. The Grosso you could make, like this Grosso would be delicious with that mushroom Bolognese sauce that's on there for the winter. And the recipe, you use fresh mushrooms, which aren't cheap, but you're not using any meat in it. So, and everything else in it is pretty reasonably priced. So, something like that would be good. Vegetarian. Like I mentioned earlier, chicken thighs are a great, meat that you can cook.
We had guests recently, and we did hamburgers. And
we made hamburgers.
This is a perfect
This was a great wine
hamburger
for that.
wine.
And you make hamburger and you make a really delicious salad that goes with it, and people are super happy. You give them a nice glass of wine, they're happy, right? You slice up some sweet onion. Our daughter likes to grill sweet onions, and she likes to do sweet onions on the barbecue for her burger, and she puts a little cheddar cheese on it, and she thinks that's great. A little Dijon mustard makes it seem fancier. Fish when it's in season can work, and there are fish out there that can pair with red wine. And again, I'll try to get
you don't need to do halibut or salmon. You can do the tilapia or rockfish,
or the Dover. In our case, like the Dover sole, can work really well. Tofu. Not everybody loves tofu. We actually don't mind tofu at all. We love tofu. We cook with it because it just absorbs whatever sauce you put it with. Beans, and we eat a lot of beans at our house. Not everybody can eat beans, but they're delicious, and they're a wonderful source of protein, and they keep in your pantry, and they're not expensive, and they can work with red wine as well. What else is in my pantry? Another ingredient that I'm really into right now, and it cooks really fast, is farro, which is a grain. And it's a grain that's really high in protein. It's sort of like not couscous, pardon me. It's sort of like quinoa, except I love farro because it's bigger, and it's
chewy.
It's chewy, and it has sort of this nutty characteristic to it, but it's super duper duper.
But you don't cook it in water. You cook it.
Yeah, if you cook in a little
low sodium chicken stock
or vegetable broth, you can do.
It's fabulous.
It's terrific, and it's nutty, and has a really good, it's unlike quinoa, which can be a little fine for me. It's a bigger size grain, and so it has a lot of chewy texture to it. So you can make a really delicious vegetarian meal with that. You can make a delicious bowl with it, with greens and maybe some cheese or not, depending upon how you're feeling. Not everybody wants cheese with it, but yeah, you can really make a delicious vegetarian meal with it. And it can stand up to the red wine, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelly and Ann, for doing this on a Saturday. We've been asked to do another one of these featuring a different varietal moving forward, which I think would be great, as we shift into the fall season to do this again.
We'd love to.
Yeah.
Be really fun.
So
we'll put our thinking caps on.
Yes.
And first we'll choose the wine. We'll decide on the wine, and then we'll figure out the recipes that we want to pair with that wine.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for those of you who are tuning in. And again, Kelly and Ann, thank you for doing this tonight.